Welcome to Carbon's DIY Garage. Today I am replacing the alternator on this 1997 2.5 liter 4-cylinder Jeep TJ. Although the process is exactly the same for the 4.0 liter 6-cylinder. And the reason I'm doing it is it's really hot here in Houston this summer. And I just been taking our vehicles to AutoZone or O'Reilly's to have them run their little battery meter on it to see if everything's still in good shape, because the batteries tend to have a hard time, especially if they're older, in this excessive heat. Battery in the TJ is fine, but the alternator voltage regulator is failing or has completely failed. Parts are not that expensive, so I'm just going to go ahead and replace it before it leaves me stranded on the side of the road. It's pretty straightforward. Here's a video on how to do it. Here we are in the engine bay. Up here I do have air conditioning on mine, so that's the AC compressor. This is on the passenger side, and you can see the alternator or the generator is right down there, and the air box is right here. And it's just two bolts, one on top and one on the bottom of the alternator you have to remove. It should come out pretty easily. But I am going to go ahead and take the air box out of here just to provide better video vantage for you. And it'll probably be easier to get the alternator out than getting it out through the fan shroud, but easily doable from what I can tell. But just go ahead and pop that off and then we'll get moving. Well, the three bolts that hold the air box down use a 5/16 socket on the top and completely rusted tight nuts underneath. So I'm not going to wrestle with that since I don't have to take this out to get the alternator out. I'm just going to leave it and the top of the air box removed. We'll call that good. Obviously it's filthy in there, so I'm going to clean that out before I put everything back together. I am going to go ahead and take the engine bay brace off over here on the passenger side though. Just it'll make access just a little bit easier, and I'm always banging myself on this thing, and it's easy to take off with a 1/2-inch socket. Now that I think we have reasonable access, we absolutely have to do electrical safing, and in this case we're going to remove the negative terminal off of the battery, and that will prevent getting electrocuted or shocked when we start messing with the alternator, because that's where your positive and negative both absolutely come together. So 1/2-inch socket to get the negative battery terminal off. And I'm just zip tying the negative terminal totally away from the battery, so that way I don't have to worry about it slipping somewhere as I'm working in here and making contact with the battery. So just an extra layer of safing. The next step is to remove the drive belt off of the alternator, and so to do that you loosen the bolt that's holding the tensioner onto the tensioner assembly, and then you loosen the tensioner bolt that is up by the power steering pump. Back that off until the tensioner relieves enough tension on the belt where you can just pull the belt off. This is easier to show you out here on the bench / deep freeze than in the Jeep, but you've got a few nuts on the back of the alternator you have to remove. This one is where your positive cable is connected. This one over here is where your negative, your ground is connected. You've got two field terminals connected here, and then this nut here holds onto the harness that has the field terminals on it. These three are 10mm, and then your two field terminals are 7mm, and the lighting and the access back behind the alternator in the Jeep isn't so great. I might even come up from underneath to get these three off, but you just need to take all 5 of these off, and then you'll be ready to pull the alternator out. I was able to get 4 of those 5 little nuts off with the alternator installed, but the last one, the one that's holding that field terminal harness to the back of the alternator, I couldn't really easily get. Maybe I could get it from underneath, but I'm just going to try pulling the alternator out and pull it forward, and then see if I can get that last bolt off more easily. And maybe everything would have come off easily if I could pull it off the bracket first. To remove it from the bracket, there's two 15mm bolts. The top bolt has a 15mm nut on the back, so you need to have 2 wrenches for that. And then the bottom one is just threaded, so you should be able to back both of those out, and then a little bit of wiggle, and it should come off the bracket. So like I had guessed, but I wasn't certain, If you take it off of the bracket, you can actually just tilt it forward just like I'm showing you, and you can access all of the nuts on the back without nearly the struggle that I was having. You have lots of clearance. You can see my ratchet down there on that last nut. So do it again, take it off the bracket first, and then you can handle all the connections. And then when you put it back together, make all the connections first and then put it up on the bracket, and it should be pretty smooth and simple. So now I'll pull that 10mm nut off the back and pull the alternator out of here. All right, here is the old and the new. I don't know how long this one's been in the Jeep, but it is looking tired and rusty. The new one looks exactly the same. I'll leave a link in the video description. It came with brand new nuts, so I don't have to reuse those. I do reuse the bolts to hold it onto the vehicle. And installation is the opposite of removal. And there are torque settings for the nuts back here. 75 inch-pounds on the bigger nuts, 25 inch-pounds on the smaller nuts. But in reality, get them good and snug and tight, but you know, don't break it. And then 40-some foot-pounds, 41 foot-pounds, I think, on the two nuts, or the bolts and nuts to hold this onto the Jeep. Thanks for watching. I hope this video has been helpful. I'm going to go ahead and continue installation of this. Also inspect that drive belt before you put that back on. But don't forget to tighten the bolt on the idler pulley after you got the belt back on. Otherwise you'll have a whole different mess to worry about. But yeah, I hope the video is helpful. Subscribe to the channel if you would please, or at least give it a thumbs up. Help out with the algorithm to keep the channel growing. And yeah, it's been a while since I posted some TJ content, so hopefully this has been a little bit of fun to see how things are going with the TJ. But thanks again for watching. Until the next video, you guys take care and have a good one.